Okay, in the AA book, we're on page 29 in the Roman numerals. And this is located where it says, on the other hand. Right almost in the middle paragraph, on the other hand. Okay, this is what it says. On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. So later they're going to show us those few simple rules. You circle the word required and write a must. And then circle seemed doomed. Very same person seemed doomed. Psychic change. The Bible speaks a lot about the mind. And you change the mind, you change the life. You ever hear of a cognitive behavior therapy? That means change the mind, you'll change that person's life. If you take cognitive behavior therapy and you meet with that person 3 times a week, 90% of people who go through that find a dramatic change in their life without medication in psychiatry. But they're not going to tell you that because there's no money in it. But they get a greater cure rate, a greater change in a person's life through counseling. If they can get the person to reevaluate and start to think differently about how they view life. So, there's a famous verse that really has helped me during a time of crisis. It's in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. I got it underlined. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16 to 18. This is a change in how we view problems. It says this is a prescription that we need to follow. For which cause we faint not, but though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, works for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory, while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, the things which are not seen are eternal. In other words, it's saying, don't look at your problems so much. Look at eternity. In the light of eternity, this problem is just a moment in time. And even though we get wrapped up with our problems and we can't see nothing else, eventually, if you look back, during times of crisis in your past, and you look back at those moments, when you were caught up in the moment, it wasn't easy. But looking back, it's almost meaningless now because you made it through. You made it through. It's a distant thought, fading thought, but at the time, it really messed you up, the crisis, the situation. But now that it worked out, and a couple years have passed, it's less of a problem looking back. And I remember times when I was under duress because of situations and problems in the past. Didn't think I could make it through another day. Fighting depression, fighting maybe even saying, I don't want to live. We've all probably made those statements at times during a time of crisis, or say, many people will say, I wish I was dead, and because of the crisis that they're in. But, we got to focus on eternity and realize that our problems are just it says it's a light affliction. And God's in control. Verse 17, it says God's basically in control and that he's working it through for his glory. So there's a lot of good verses in the Bible. If we take it and we try to live by it, it's very transformational to transform our thinking and how we approach things in life. So once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems, he despaired even of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. Okay, it says, men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal. Doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop. I cannot, but I cannot. You must help me. Faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. Although he gives all that is in him, it often is not enough. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. So it's saying without God's intervention and help and direction, we're not going to substantially change how we view and think in life. That's why the Bible is so important, that we get into it, that we read it, that we memorize it, because it's very transformational. It's more transformational than anything else that we can read. So on the right margin, I wrote, only God can change my life. Okay, dropping down to the last paragraph on this page, it states this. I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. So I wrote the word why on the left margin. So this doctor's making this statement. I have had many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal which was to be settled on a certain date favorably to them. They took a drink day or so prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount to all other interests, so that the important appointment was not met. These men were not drinking to escape, they were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. Okay, now listen to this. It says, they took a drink a day or so prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount. The phenomenon of craving. I'm going to give you another example other than alcohol, how the phenomenon of craving can develop. If you have a problem with your sexuality, and you go on a summer's day to the beach, and you're walking the beach, and there's women walking around in bikinis, at that moment you're developing a phenomenon of craving, due to the fact that you're looking at the women walking around. Okay, so you walk off the beach, and now you have a phenomenon of craving. What do you think it'll drive you to do? You came to the beach thinking, I'm just coming here to go swimming. But you get a phenomenon of craving. And you walk off the beach, you're all alone. What do you think you might possibly do as a result? Well, possibly. Or you might go looking for a prostitute. Or you might call some girl up or somebody. Or you might end up going where you know women are hanging out that are easy catches, like at a crack house or someplace like that. And then before you know it, you're sitting in jail because of some circumstance beyond your ability to control. But it all started by placing yourself in an area where the phenomenon of craving can be developed. So sometimes you got to stay away from people, places, and things. Even though you'd love to go swimming because you like to swim and you like the beach, but sometimes you just got to stay away. Or you might say, okay, I think I can go, and I'll just keep my eyes straight on the water. I'll just watch the ships way out there. But the thing is, you got eyes behind your head. And so it's like, well, I know she's walking behind me, but I'm not going to look. I'm going to look at that boat out there. Well, that can be an irritant, right? Right? Because that still can kind of like play a psychic game with your flesh. And at some point, you're going to give in. And then other things come out of it. There are a lot of people sitting in prison for many, many years because of a phenomenon of craving. At the wrong place, at the wrong time, and situations developed. So we can kind of like relate to what they're saying here about the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount to all other interests so that the important appointment was not met. Have you ever been late for an appointment because you were too busy trying to finish up doing something wrong?
Yeah, sure.
Happens quite often. Or you try to judge the time, like, well, I think I got 2 more minutes. I think I can make it there in 5 minutes. So it says that the phenomenon of craving becomes the paramount issue, not the appointments and things. A lot of people have lost jobs that way. They get wrapped up in something at the last minute. Okay, you got 20 minutes to get to work, and then you get wrapped up, and then before you know it, you're late, or you get a warning at your job. But the thing is, we tend to repeat that behavior. And we might say, you know, man, I almost lost my job. But then the next opportunity, when that phenomenon of craving sets in, you do it again. And then eventually, you know, you end up losing the job. Okay, I got this highlighted. It's on Roman numeral 30 on the top. These men were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. Okay, next, our new paper, lesson 7. Lesson 7 says there are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving. Okay, many situations. Looking back on life, you can think of all the different situations that came out of the phenomenon of craving, which caused men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. Supreme sacrifice, that's referring to suicide. Amen. Suicide predominantly is a cry for help. It's a cry for help for an unmet need. It's saying to people, please see that I got a problem and save me, help me, deliver me. People have a hard time just going and talking to someone and saying, look, I got these problems. They do things to manifest the need without wanting to go and talk to someone, whether it's pride or whatever causes that. People have these escape mechanisms that they use as a cry for help without actually asking for help. Almost all depression is a cry for help. It is the most common coping mechanism known to man. If you watch your favorite football team lose, and you so desperately wanted them to win, after the loss, you will feel a slight depression. The slight depression is not due to a coincidence of a chemical imbalance. It is due to a purposeful depression in order to cope with the unmet need that your team lost. What if your team won and they beat the other team so miserably bad that they had to leave the field in disgrace? How would you feel? You would be feeling quite excited.
And then once
And you,
that feeling wore off, you would go into depression because you want that feeling back. So it can go either way.
yeah, that can happen, yeah. Yeah. But, so there's a lot of coping mechanisms that cause people to react in various ways. Suicide is just one of many ways that people use to try to fight an unsatisfied feeling or distress in their life. And we've all been there saying, I wish I was dead. A couple women have made me say that, I wish I was dead. Losing relationships have made me say that. I wish I was dead. I don't want to live without her. My life is so miserable now. I'm bored. What am I going to do? I can't go over and visit anymore. I can't see her no more. I'm unhappy. I don't want to live. I've made statements like that growing up. So here it says that oftentimes the phenomenon of craving, have you ever be so mad at yourself because of the phenomenon of craving? I'm sick of myself. Have you made that statement? I'm sick of being sick. I'm sick and tired of being sick. I'm sick and tired of getting in this situation where I can't control this, and it's causing me so much grief and trouble. I remember a couple times early on going down to the New Jersey shore, and then you get that long drive back. It's like an hour drive back to Philadelphia, and you're driving back with a phenomenon of craving. You got a whole hour to think about it, a whole hour to dwell on it, and you're driving back thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm so lonely. I'm so lonely. And you just keep repeating that mile after mile. I'm so lonely. There's nobody even sitting in the car here with me. I'm so lonely. What am I going to do when I get home? I'm so lonely. And the phenomenon of craving is being developed. And then you go for that little drive, right? Or you go for that, if you don't have a car, then you go for that little walk. There was a guy, I remember a guy one time gave up a stimulant, cocaine. He had to replace it with prostitutes, but he wasn't accustomed to looking for prostitutes prior to giving up the cocaine. But since he gave that stimulant up, he had to find another stimulant to replace it, so he went looking for women every opportunity he had to get a pass or to get time to sign out. He developed a habit of walking to a certain area to get that lonely feeling satisfied and to get the stimulant, a new drug, which was the women. So, to be honest with you, that phenomenon of craving is the biggest issue that men have in recovery. But just like a person who wants to commit suicide and they don't want to admit they got an unmet need and a struggle, so they try to attempt suicide so that to get the attention of someone to say, hey, I see you really do got a problem. Now we're going to have intervention. The ER says, now we're going to have intervention. The social worker will be visiting you before you leave. We're going to set up a plan and help. You know, a lot of people have phenomenon of craving, and they commit crime sprees until they get a parole officer. And that parole officer is the cure to their phenomenon of craving. He will be there to help you every step of the way, to help you through your crime issues. People join gangs because they have an unmet need. Phenomenon of craving, an unmet need, and they find a gang and find that need that they've been looking for because they didn't find it at home. No parental guidance, no real true love or support at home, so they find it in the form of a gang. And for the first time, they find some peace of mind, some purpose for living, and a group of people that will stand by them. We'll do a blood covenant. You're our brother. We're going to take care of you. We're going to support you. Whenever you're depressed or you have a need, you come to us. We're going to help you out. That gets them through. That's why it's very important when you're coming out of addiction that you have your gang, your group, your group of people. That's why a person who comes out of addiction but yet doesn't have a tribal group that they hang out with, a group of recovering people that is like brothers that they can go to in a time of need, trouble, disappointment, and hurts. They don't have that group, and they just are isolated and alone. Relapse rate is extremely high. You can't survive without your gang. You can't survive on your own, isolated, sitting up in some room or apartment. So what you may attempt to do, since you don't have your gang to go to, you look for a temporary fix that seldom works out well. What's a temporary fix?
Temporary something.
Starts with a W. A woman. So you say, hey, move in with me, and she's your little gang. But I tell you, that's not going to work very well. You need some wholesome, good guys, a group of people that's going to be there for you through thick or thin, that you can call on, and that when you go missing, they go looking.
Amen.
Quickly. It says the Bible says that you leave the what? The 99, right? That are doing well. You leave the 99, you go looking for the one that's out there to try to find them and bring them back. That's a gang. Only a gang will do that for a gang member. Go looking. Once you become a part of many gangs, you can't leave because it's a blood covenant with that gang. That's the kind of connection we need in order to survive overcoming that lifestyle. We need to have a new life, a new gang, a new identity, and a new place to hang out. I remember going through struggles, sitting in a house. I had my own house, and I'm by myself. I'll tell you, you talk about a play in the mind. My mind was going crazy, thinking, here I got this big house, I could show off. I could bring a woman here and show off and say, look, I got a house. All kinds of stuff was going through my mind. Okay, this is what I did. Knowing all this stuff was going through my mind, I never came to the house until about 10 o'clock at night when it was time to go to sleep and I was pretty tired. All the other time I was spent with my parents, or I had my routine of various kinds of meetings. I had at Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, they had a drug ministry meeting, just like MEW. There was AA meetings. I only went to an NA meeting a few times. I never liked NA meetings. AA meetings, I found some great ones. And so I hung out in all these meetings. I had a routine. I stayed in the land of the living and hung out with people that I know is going to be supportive, and they understand and can sympathize and relate. After a while, I decided I had other rooms. I had a couple other rooms in the place. It was a pretty big house I had. And I divided up the wall. The living room, I put a wall in the living room. The steps going upstairs, second and third floor house. And for many, many years, I had a halfway house. Guys would come after graduation or after other things, and they would rent rooms. I probably helped out at least 80 guys. A percentage of them would relapse. They'd be doing great, and you'd get to know them under a controlled environment. And you think, this guy, I think I can trust, and seems to be doing quite well. outside of that controlled environment, I started to find out that the person is not quite the person I thought they was or could be while in that controlled environment. I've had guys do great for long periods of time under a controlled environment. And the very day they were outside that controlled environment, literally had guys staggering down the middle of the street, and I could see them falling over. Just like the guy that, when I rode with Kevin to the Starbucks, I was shocked. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. Sitting in the parking lot, I see this guy on a bike, and the cars are parked in the parking lot, right, in front of the stores, and he hit the cars, boom, and he fell off, and he damaged the car, and he got up, and he started staggering, and said, "Man, I didn't see that car." I'm thinking, the car's parked. It's not like the car ran in front of you. And then he started going sideways. You know, he tried to grab his bike, and then he, lost his balance. And he lost his balance for a long time. He kept going. And then he started going the other way. And then he fell against the car. I thought, this guy's drunk. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. But I've seen a lot of situations. I had a guy that really needed my help, and he had people supporting him. Even the father said, "Look, can you take care of my son?" I think he was like 18 or 19. He just needs a chance. He needs a place, and I will help pay for his rent. Okay. So since I had so many people pulling for this guy, I brought him in. Do you know within a few weeks, knock on the front door, and I open it, and you know who it was? The police.
Oh, I recognize that knock.
Yeah. I hate knocks on doors. To this day, knocks paranoid me. Especially when you look at it, it's like, I don't know who that is. You know? Even to this day, if you see a parked police car in front of your house for some other reason, it's like, what are they doing out there? But here, a knock on the door. I open it up, and they said, "Do you know a Robert so-and-so?" I said, "Well, I know a Bob." And they say, "Well, okay, well, does he live here?" I said, "Well, there's a Bob that lives here." I'm thinking in my mind, what did this young guy do? They said he has violated. They said he's on Megan's Law, which I did not know. That's the sex offenders thing. And they said he has violated it in your community. I'm like, what? They said he's been messing with the little girls around the corner on the other street. I'm like, wow. The father didn't tell me his son had these issues. That's what I'm thinking in my mind. No wonder he's trying to get his son to give him a chance to try to pay for his rent. All kinds of stuff's going through my mind. But they actually took him away. He went to prison. But I can tell you, the house caught on fire twice. One was someone smoking a cigarette. After a period of time, then I had to develop the rule: no smoking. Smoked and dropped a cigarette. This is a person that graduated the recovery program. Dropped a cigarette in a basket of clothes. Started to see the fire develop, got scared, and ran out. Oh, man. The fire developed, and you got to keep in mind, his room is on the second floor. On the third is another person. Can you imagine? Could get trapped. And there was a fire. It didn't develop really bad, but it caused a lot of smoke damage to the entire house. It melted the windows in that room. The floor had brown marks on it from the fire. because of that incident, I was homeless for 6 months.
And he gave you a positive, I gave you.
He ran and kept running. He never did. I think he had the beginnings of a relapse, and he eventually, I think 2 years later, died from drug activity. But I can tell you situation after situation, many success stories, but many other situations, you know. And one thing I've learned from it is that you gotta watch about what's going on up here when you're in a recovery program, because in a recovery program you get a false sense of security. You get a false sense that that you're now strong. But the strength you've got is being drawn from a collection of 25 guys. And you're drawing the strength from them, thinking it's your strength, but it's really the strength of all the people around you helping you. And you don't realize it. You don't realize that's where your strength's coming from. It's not coming from within you. It's coming from the support group that you're with. So then when you go out on your own and you no longer have that support group and influence and encouragement and discipline to do the right thing, that sometimes bad things happen. It's a play in the mind. And quite often I found that guys will get to a point where they get a false sense of, I got it made, I'm cured. I think I can do this. I've heard that statement many times. I think I can do this. I think the tools that I've received up to this point, I'm going to be fine. I've heard that statement. I've heard many statements. It's a false sense of security, and it's like getting a quick fix. But it takes a long period of time, and you got to be extremely cautious. Even when you know you're doing great, and you feel like you got strength and you got that ability to now get out there and do it, be very cautious, because it might be the addiction speaking to your mind, and you think that it's something else speaking. So you got to be careful about trusting your own thoughts. Most of the time, you got to be very careful. It says, in the multitude of counselors, there's what? Safety. And you learn a long time ago, you better talk a lot and talk to a lot of the right people before you make a decision, because if you trust your own thinking and you think, well, my thinking is right and I'm thinking sanely, you may not be thinking sanely. I've found that out. So by working with many people in a controlled environment and outside of a controlled environment, I got to see a lot of hidden things that you got to be cautious about. So, that the entire psychic change in the mind is extremely important. And as your mind is being changed, use that verse. It's in Proverbs. In the multitude of counselors, there's safety. How many people, good people, have you asked advice from before you made that decision to leave the program? Did you go to Rick McClung and say, look, I feel like I've been in the program for X number of months and I feel like I think I can make it. I got a place I think I can go and live. I think I got a job waiting for me. What do you think, Rick? I don't like your answer. Let me go to someone else. Let me go to someone that maybe might be thinking the same way I'm thinking, because they're thinking about leaving too. Let me go and ask them, hey, Johnny Jones, what do you think? I'm thinking of leaving the program because I got this, and this. Well, I'll tell you what. I've been thinking about leaving too. Why don't we just both leave together and we'll help share in. Is that the kind of advice? Is that the person you want to go to for advice? You got to be very careful in who plants thoughts into your mind. All it takes is one person to plant the wrong thought, and you develop that thought, and then you run with it. You know, I always go back to Saul of Tarsus. He was on the road to Damascus doing his own thing, but he asked advice from Jesus for the first time. Lord, what do you want me to do? That's the first time he asked advice from Jesus, and it's the first question on his mind. So, why would he have to ask him that? Did he have to ask him that? But he did ask him that. What do you want me to do? And he told him what to do. Step by step, this is what I want you to do. And he did it step by step, just as Jesus told him what to do. He did it. So it's very important that we don't get caught up, because you got to remind yourself. It says that our life was what? Unmanageable. And it says we were restored to sanity. Well, that's saying something. I thought I was thinking normal. Now you're saying I was insane? Well, that's what it says on that step. Restored to sanity. That means I was not thinking straight. And my life was unmanageable because I wasn't thinking straight. But now I got to be restored to sanity. So you got to be very careful. Don't ever make impulsive decisions. An impulsive decision almost never comes from God. God doesn't make quick fixes. Take your time, think and pray, and seek godly advice. I like Psalm 1. In fact, I memorized Psalm 1 soon after I got saved. The famous Psalm 1 for addicts. Blessed is a man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly. And the word walk, a baby can't walk. It's talking about the mindset is geared towards seeking ungodly advice. Blessed is a man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. You see the backsliding there? Walking, standing, sitting. That's why it's very important to underline and write things in your Bible. You would never catch that just by reading that verse until someone emphasizes it. Hey, it does walk, stand, and sit. Let me circle those three words in Psalm 1:1. Walk, stand, sit. So the next time I read this, that's going to hit me. It might be during a day when I have the phenomenon of craving, and I happen to just pick up my Bible and it says walk, stand, sit. Okay, I already did the walking. I got the phenomenon of craving. Now I'm going to do this. I'm heading toward doing the standing. Now if I do the standing, I'll probably end up doing the sitting, and it'll probably be in a jail cell. So maybe you say, okay, I got to do something at this point. How am I going to escape? And to be honest with you, and I'm not giving you, I don't want to give you poor advice, but I'm just telling you from experience, you might have to do the little thing, if you know what I'm talking about. And that point, phenomenon of craving, sexually. You know you don't want to go, you know you have the urge to want to go and get a prostitute or go to a crack house. And you got this urge that just seems to not want to go away. And you're being driven to do these drastic measures that could cause you some major problems. You might want to do, you know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Just to get some relief from being driven in that direction.
Amen.
Sometimes a person has no other choice when they're in the heat of the moment, if you know what I mean. I'm just giving it real, men to men.
Yeah.
Right, squeezing.
So,
What are we talking about?
Billy, squeezing.
well, it's like gang lingo talk. Like those who know understand.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen.
Okay. Let's let me see here. Let's move on here.
Yeah.
Okay, we're at Okay, the classification, you see that? Near the top of page 30. The classification of alcoholics seems most difficult, and in much detail is outside the scope of this book. There are, of course, number one, the psychopath who are emotionally unstable. We are all familiar with this type. They are always going on the wagon for keeps. They are over remorseful and make many resolutions, but never a decision. There is the type of man who is unwilling to admit that he cannot take a drink. He plans various ways of drinking. He changes his brand or his environment. That's the number two type of person. Number three, there is the type who always believes that after being entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, he can take a drink without danger. That's a third type of person. Number four, there is the manic depressive type who is perhaps the least understood by his friends and about whom a whole chapter could be written. Number five, then there are types entirely normal in every respect except in the effect alcohol has upon them. They are often intelligent, friendly people. Okay, we'll close with that, and we'll continue on this sheet. Okay, someone want to pray for me?
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this class. We thank you for this day, waking us up another day sober and alive. We ask that you guide us throughout this day with your glorified